conversation with you. You are going to be staying here for 2 more days. Yeah, 2 weeks, but you're going to be gone on Friday or whatever.
Yeah, Friday I'm not here to be good.
Okay. And Max has been the focal point for the Alumni Association of the MSD students for years now. So if anybody knows all the MSD students and have close contact with them also after graduation, it's Max. So please get in touch with him. When you are a professor, you know, when you're producing something, when you really produce code or you produce automobiles or something, you have a sense that you're accomplishing something, right? You have a sense that something is being produced and something is being used, and you know, when you're a professor, you know, you say, you look at all these students that are passing through your classroom, and then they're gone, and you don't know really what's happening to what you were teaching them out there. It's a very strange feeling if you start thinking about it, so I prefer not to think about it. But sometimes, occasionally, you meet people who've been through the program and who has accomplished phenomenal things and who also provides feedback, and that's what we're going to experience today. So Billy, we all call you Billy, right?
Yeah,
William Schoenberg. Billy,
William gets a punch.
actually attended our program here and took a master's here a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I was with Carmen.
We went
Carmen.
And has since then been in Foreo in San Francisco, and now with IC Systems doing phenomenal work in software development. And we all know that we need software, we need efficient software, we need software that's productive to us. And that's what you have accomplished together with Bob Eveline lately, moving Stella from what it used to be into a pretty impressive product in my mind. And it's so that we're very happy in being in such a close contact with IC Systems and with you in particular. Every time we say something, even come up with an idea, that idea is implemented straight away. So yesterday we had dinner together. We were discussing something pretty, you wouldn't expect that it would be possible to implement what I then just suggested very briefly, sort of in passing. And this morning, Billy showed me, yes, we've already got that.
We made that last night.
Yeah, we made that last night. It was just incredible. So that relationship with a software vendor that is attentive to the needs that we have and see the possibility for product development and for therefore reaching out to a vaster audience, larger, wider audience with everything that's now being built in is great. It's also very difficult when you get a new piece of software in your hands to understand all the possibilities that exist with that software. And through the lectures that I've given, we've been just touching upon a few things and using this as a modeling and simulation tool. But to a large extent, Stella has now become a communication tool. And I think that's what we're going to be talking about today. And with this, I leave it to you to, first of all, talk about your philosophy and your ideas about what Stella can be doing, is doing, and can be doing. And then for this to become a workshop gradually, where you're actually going to work with the software. There is a lot of, or at least some files now uploaded to your website, where you can download it on your computer, and that will be the basis for the workshop that will take place today and these subsequent afternoons in this week.
Yes.
Very, very glad to have you here. Happy to see you, and I'm sure this will be a phenomenal experience for all of us.
Alrighty, yeah, so like Paul was saying, I was a master's student here. I started in 2008, but like everything in my life, I do it backwards in the wrong way. So I didn't finish till, 2012. Anyway, I'm here till, next Saturday. And I'm not really doing anything else. So, and it's rare for me to be in a situation like this. So if you have questions, you want to know something, anything, bother me. I'm here to be bothered. So you're not bothering me. The other thing is I'm only going to talk at you today for hopefully an hour, and then I'll be done talking at you, and I'm hoping that actually for the rest of the week you'll be talking at me. We'll actually make a couple of things together this week. So like Paul was saying, I have a lot of experience in tools and tooling. My main belief is that one of the biggest things holding back this community and this field is tools, and the highest leverage point I feel, at least for me, is tools, so that's where I work. So I worked for Foreo, I don't know how many people are familiar with them, from, 08 till 2012, so I must have finished my thesis in 11. And there I worked on their now legacy platform, Foreo Simulate. So if you ever use the drag and drop UI designer or the Model Explorer, I was the guy behind that. I've now transitioned to IC Systems, where I wrote all of the UI for Stella Professional, Stella Modeler for the iPad, and Stella Architect. So as you can see, while I am capable of writing simulation engines, I've never really had to do that. I've always had a partner who's been better at writing engines than I am. I exist in this weird, funny space that the community doesn't really look at, which exists between calculations and end products. End products being interfaces and interactive learning environments. So with that, let's kind of get ourselves going here. Today, we're going to go through the following stuff. I want to give you taxonomy for learning environments. So something I never had, and I really wish that I had, when I was in your seat, was a taxonomy, kind of a dichotomous key for all of the different kinds of learning environments that exist. And through my time at Foreo, I was a consultant there as well. I've kind of built or seen built one of pretty much every different kind of interface. And so I'm going to go through with you in this course all of the single player archetypes and types for interfaces. If you're interested in multiplayer stuff, that's something that we can talk about, not in a format like this, that we can talk about during the second week when things become way less structured than they are this week. But the reason why I did that is right now the tools that I've developed at IC Systems are only capable of single player environments, but one of the things high on my list when I get back to New York is actually multiplayer stuff. So maybe next year, this time, we'll do multiplayer games. After that, I want to talk to you about the process for doing this. I've made these things for Harvard Business School, for the CDC, for IBM, for Major League Baseball, for all. So I've got the experience to tell you how this works in the real world. How projects get sold, how projects get developed, and you keep hearing me use this word project because it's not just a model. A model is only one tiny piece of this entire process. If you go into an organization and you say, I'm a system dynamicist, I've got this great method that applies to everything in the world, they're just going to stick their fingers in their ear and not listen to you. So it's all about the project. What are you delivering to them? What's the deliverable? And the deliverable rarely is a model in isolation. It's a model with a learning environment, with training, with debriefing, with all of this other tooling and content around it. So I'll kind of teach you about that. And then we'll actually get into using Architect today. I'm going to give you just the 30,000-foot overview. Over the rest of the week, we're actually going to develop a pretty in-depth learning environment, actually based on Nintendo. So I'm going to pretend to be one of the executives at Nintendo. You all have been hired as the consulting team, and we'll work through a project together. So that should be pretty cool. That'll be what the rest of the week is. That's why I'm hoping that you guys will be talking at me rather than me sitting here on my soapbox talking to you. Alrighty, so what is a learning environment? And I obviously put within the context of system dynamics because learning environments are used everywhere. Like Paul was saying and alluding to, it's a communication tool. But I'm curious, what do you guys think a learning environment is? You know, when you close your eyes and you think of learning environment, what do you see in your head?
Okay, I see the room in which people are sitting. There is some tool they're using, software, computers. They're asking questions and they're having feedbacks among themselves. And then based on the question they want to find the answer, they are probably using some system of elimination to get to the facts, and then they put that into the model.
Yeah, so you're pretty close to on the mark here. So sometimes people refer to it as a whole bunch of different things. So you'll hear these words, and they all mean interactive learning environment. Interface, GUI, graphical user interface. Dashboard, so all of the big SAP tools and all have dashboards. It's just another word for learning environment. Flight simulator, that's kind of an older word. That I think was more the 90s, like PeopleSoft, and they were called management flight simulators, and micro-worlds. But really, it's the top three you really hear about in business today. The other two are more you read about in the literature. And they're all the same thing. They're all perfect synonyms, at least in real world speak. I'm sure everybody's defined each one as a different thing, but in the real world, people all use them as the same thing. So broadly speaking, this was the definition that I came up with for a learning environment. So I say a learning environment is a way or a tool for communicating the results and key insights of a system dynamics model to an audience in order to reveal key insights of a model without the audience having to go through the modeling process themselves. So there's a couple of interesting pieces of this. First is the word tool, and then like Paul was saying, communicating. Most important word, audience. Who are we talking to? And then finally, yeah, it'd be best if we could get everybody to build the model of the problem themselves and really understand the problem, like we understand the problem, but you know what? CEO of Nintendo doesn't have time to do that. So we need to find a shortcut. It's really all about a shortcut to gaining the key insights and understanding from a system dynamics model without having to build it yourself. Okay, so this is, to me, the most important thing, and I think something the field sometimes forgets. So a model's usefulness is the power of the simulation model, its ability to help you understand things, multiplied by the effectiveness of results and insights communication. So, if we do some extreme conditions testing, and we substitute 0 for the effectiveness of results and insight communication, what do you get? A useless model. So the thing I like to always say is you could have a model that answers, the life, universe, and everything, 42. But if you don't tell anybody, or you can't tell anybody because it's so complicated, you haven't really done anything. So this is just as important as the simulation model power. Vice versa, if you've got a model that's crap and is wrong, and you've made that really wrong insight highly available, it's just as useless. So it's interesting to think about. You would never ever share horribly wrong insights. And by this equation, that's just as bad as not being able to share the insights at all. So interfaces, super important. All right, so back to that definition of what a learning environment is. You got to think of who, the audience. What do they know? What do you need to teach them? How are they coming into you? Where do they start? So if you're building an experiment, it's kind of the pre-assessment test. Where are they going to land on this pre-assessment test? Do they know anything about the subject altogether, or are they, an expert in marketing and you're just trying to teach them a new technique? Who are they? In some cases, you got to think about their desire to learn, or even open hostility to learning. So you come into an organization and they've always done things this way. I've always walked to the copy machine, turned a crank, and out came 100 different sheets of paper, versus now I walk to the copy machine and I press a button and out comes 100 different pieces of paper. Sometimes people really like turning that crank. So you need to be cognizant of whether or not the audience even wants to learn. And all of this kind of affects what's going on in your head as the interface designer or the interface developer when you're building these tools to share the results of your models. You got to think about where and when, like you were saying, when you pictured a learning environment in your head, where are they? That's really important. So I can't have a learning environment where it's just, where you fill out some stuff on paper and you give it to me and I plug it into the model and then, I give you results back on a piece of paper. You can't do that if I'm in New York and you're in Bergen and he's in San Francisco. So you got to know where they are, not only physically, but mentally. Are they at work doing this? Is it a forced task? Are they at home? Are they doing this of their own volition? Are they at school? Are they students? Are they doing this because their professor bribed them to come to classes? So you got to keep that in the back of your head. And then finally, there's all different ways you can develop these learning environments. I'm going to focus on software, clearly, because I believe software is at least the highest leverage point for me. But you can do these things with pencil and paper. You could do this through lecture. One of the most common ways that people share the results of models is they make horribly long and boring PowerPoints and talk at you, like this. So you can do it through lecture or video. And then you got to think about and remember why we're doing this in the first place. Because you've got multiple people you need to satisfy. Your audience is not only the people who are going to play your learning environment, but the person who commissioned the learning environment to begin with. So I don't think I've ever had a project where the people who are really using the tool are the people who are paying you. And unfortunately, because we live in the real world, we have to make not only the people who are using the tool smarter and happy, but we have to make the people who are paying us feel smarter and happy. And very often, there's differing goals between those two groups of people, the people paying for the projects versus the people using the projects. Yeah?
Can you just give the example between who can pay and who can use in that context? Why they're different?
So let's take an example. Okay, so I've developed a variety of curriculum with Harvard Business School Publishing. And they develop, and I'll show you some of the examples later on here. They develop case studies, online interactive case studies, which are used by all of the incoming MBAs, most of them at least in the United States. The client there is Harvard Business School Publishing. They're the ones who are paying us. But the people who are actually using the simulation are all of these MBA students. So we need to make Harvard Business School Publishing happy, which means it needs to be a highly polished product. It needs to look good. The branding needs to be right. So we used to get these style guides like this from, designers at Harvard. The logo needs to be of this font, and the H needs to be, this many pixels wide. And it has to be that color. And if you put pink on Thursday, and it's got to be yellow. So does any of that help the MBA student learn about managing a business? No. But does that make Harvard happy? Yes. So very often you're pleasing two people. In that case, that wasn't a good example of budding.
But it is.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a good example of where I've had a client whose end user has opposing goals from the people who are paying for the tool. Oh, here we go. I'm under NDA, so I'll change all of the context. So I did a project with this consortium of companies, and it was the consortium that was paying for and funding the project. And each of these different, sub-companies, think of them almost as franchises, all had different competing interests. And this whole project was about what's the right way, the best way to sell product. The consortium really had all of its eggs in one basket. They said, oh, it's really through a marketplace where we change the price of things on a daily basis based on how much supply is left. But the original businesses, each of these franchises, was so afraid of that. That was the last thing they wanted to do, because then they'd have to hire people to actually take care of that process. They'd have to build systems to do that. They would have to change the way that market perceptions work. They've had clients who have bought these products for 50 years, and the price has always been the price. But they had this problem with an awful secondary market. And this was really the solution that we had come up with as consultants in the case, where you needed to do dynamic pricing. If you wanted to kill the secondary market and reap those profits, you needed to move to a dynamic pricing model. But to the lower level businesses, to the ones who are actually doing the sales, that was death. That was worse than death. That was the last thing they ever wanted to do. So it's really hard. You got to navigate these funny situations where people might not necessarily want to hear what you have to say. Okay, so let's talk about single-player learning environments. That's what we're really going to focus on today. We're not going to do anything about lectures as a way of presenting models. We're going to talk about single-player tools that allow people to understand models. Okay, so here's a couple of examples of simulations. Healthbound was, I think, the Applications Award winner from the Society in 2009 or 10. CLearn is the Climate Interactive people. Harvard Pricing, that's one of the simulations I made when I was at Forio. That gets played by these MBA students. Benihana is a Hibachi Steakhouse. So this is actually a case study about running the steakhouse, which teaches you all about actually more operations management themes like batching and cycle time and throughput time and stuff like that. But I'll show you all this stuff. A little emergency room simulator I made, and this was actually the case that I invented for my master's thesis. The laundry detergent simulator, a simple little task. Alrighty, so let's start